At Crow's home in suburban Atlanta, Georgia, the air was filled with the aroma of fried garlic chicken and the sweet smokiness of an apple pie fresh out of the oven. Allison Crow, a 42-year-old woman with brown locks pulled back into a neat bun, stood at the kitchen island, nervously fiddling with the edge of a crisp white tablecloth. Her fingers trembled as she placed the napkins on the plates, perfectly evenly, as if her life depended on it. Today was more than just dinner. Today, their daughter Lily, their little pride, brought home her fiancé for the first time. Trevor. The name sounded in Allison's head like a bell unfamiliar, but somehow alarming. "Garrett, have you checked the wine?" she shouted without turning around, her voice trembling slightly, betraying the tension. Garrett Crow, a 45-year-old man with broad shoulders and a touch of gray at the temples, appeared in the doorway holding a bottle of red Pinot Noir. He grinned at his wife, who was bustling around the table like a general before a battle. "Eli, relax," he said, putting the bottle on the counter. "The wine is excellent, the chicken smells so good that I'm ready to eat it right now, and what about the pie? Hell, I'm married to a culinary goddess. What could go wrong?" Allison glanced at him, her blue eyes sparkling with irritation. "Things can go wrong, Garrett. This is the first time we'll see Trevor." Garrett laughed, his deep voice filling the kitchen. He came up behind Allison, put his arm around her waist, and pulled her towards him. "You think too much," he whispered in her ear. "Lily said he's a normal guy. Guy from a decent family. If we don't like him, I'll just give him whiskey and kick him out. And if he's vegan, well, we have salad." Allison snorted, but the corners of her lips twitched into a smile. She pushed her husband away with her elbow and returned to her task. Now she was checking that the glasses were level. "You're unbearable," she muttered. "But seriously, Garrett, I want everything to be perfect. Lily is so happy. I haven't seen her like this since. Well, since she left for college." Garrett nodded, moving to the counter to open the wine. "She's in love, Eli. This can be seen in her voice. And we just have to not screw this up in front of Trevor. I've already come up with a couple of jokes to lighten the mood. For example, 'Trevor, if our toaster freezes, will you reboot it?'" Allison rolled her eyes, but her shoulders relaxed a little. She loved Garrett for his ability to turn her anxiety into light laughter. They had been married for 23 years, and although the last couple of years their marriage had become more of a habit than a passion, Garrett could still calm her down. Allison took a deep breath, trying to push away the strange feeling that had been gnawing at her insides all day. She couldn't explain it, just a bundle of nerves in her chest, as if something was about to happen. "Mom, Dad, we are here." Lily's ringing voice rushed into the house like the wind, followed by the sound of the front door slamming. Allison winced, almost dropping her fork. She quickly adjusted her apron and glanced at Garrett. "They have arrived. Go meet me, I'll be out now." Garrett winked at her and headed towards the door, humming something under his breath. Allison stayed in the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel and muttering to herself. "Everything will be fine. Just smile. It's just dinner. Just a son-in-law. It's okay." A minute later, Lily flew into the living room, a 22-year-old copy of her mother, only with a short pixie haircut and a daring sparkle in her eyes. Her cheeks were flushed with excitement, and her smile was wider than that of the Cheshire Cat. "Mom, Dad, it's him," she announced, stepping aside theatrically like the host of a show. "Trevor, come in, don't be shy." Garrett was already standing at the door, holding out his hand. "Welcome, Trevor. Come in, Guy, don't stand on the threshold. I'm Garrett, this is our home, and today you're the center of attention." A tall young man of about 25, with dark hair slightly tousled by the wind and neat stubble on his chin, appeared at the door. He held a bouquet of yellow roses in one hand and a bottle of Jack Daniel's whiskey in the other. His dark green eyes slid over Garrett, then over Lily, and finally settled on the kitchen door, where Allison stood frozen. He smiled warmly, almost sincerely. "Mr. Crow, Mrs. Crow, nice to finally meet you," he said, handing the bouquet to Garrett. "Lily told me so much about you. This is for you. And so, whiskey, I thought it would go well with dinner." Garrett patted him on the shoulder, accepting the gifts. Great choice, son. Come in, sit down. Eli, come here and meet our future son-in-law. Allison slowly walked out of the kitchen, her heels clicking softly on the wooden floor. She put on a smile, trying to look like a hospitable hostess, but inside her heart was beating like a drum. She looked up at Trevor, and at that moment the world around her froze. His face, these eyes, this stubble, this voice. She knew him, not as a daughter's fiancé, and like the guy from the Neon Pulse Club, with whom she, after getting drunk on tequila with her friends, retired to a cramped toilet stall last weekend. The smell of his cologne, his hands on her waist, her own drunken laughter, all this flashed into her memory like lightning. Allison felt the blood drain from her face, and her legs became weak. Trevor also froze. His smile faltered, and his fingers clenched the bottle of whiskey until his knuckles turned white. He looked at her, and the same recognition, the same horror flashed in his eyes. They both knew, and both were silent. Eli, Garrett's voice pulled her out of her stupor. He frowned at his wife. Why are you frozen? Say something. The guy tried his best. He came with flowers. Allison opened her mouth, but instead of words, a faint wheeze came out of her throat. Her gaze darted from Trevor to Lily, who was happily chattering something about their acquaintance, and back to him. Her pupils dilated, and her breathing became labored. I, she muttered, stepping back. And then her knees gave way. She collapsed to the floor, hitting her elbow on the edge of the table. The glass of water that she had set down a minute ago flew down and broke into pieces, flooding her dress. Lily screamed, rushing to her mother. Mother, Lord, what's wrong with you? Garrett rushed over to Allison, kneeling down. He slapped her cheeks, his voice trembling with panic. Eli, wake up. Damn, Lily, bring some water. Fast. Lily rushed towards the kitchen, her steps echoing loudly in the silence. Garrett raised his head, glancing at Trevor, who was still standing at the door like a statue. Trevor, don't stand there like a pillar. Help, he barked. But Trevor didn't move. His gaze was focused on Allison lying on the floor. That Saturday evening was spinning in his head. Loud music, strobe lights, her drunken whisper, just don't tell anyone. He swallowed, feeling sweat running down his back. It wasn't just dinner. It was the worst nightmare he slept with his future mother-in-law. Lily returned with a wet towel, pressing it to her mother's face. Mom, please wake up. Dad, what's wrong with her? Maybe call an ambulance? Allison moaned, her eyelids fluttering. She slowly opened her eyes, meeting Garrett's gaze. I'm fine, she croaked, trying to sit up. It's just, my head is spinning. Tired, probably. Garrett helped her up, holding her at the waist. His face was tense, but he forced himself to smile. You scared me to death, Eli. I should have fussed less. Sit down. Now you can drink some water. Lily turned to Trevor, her brow furrowed. Trev, why are you silent? Are you okay? Trevor blinked as if waking up. He coughed, putting on a weak smile. Yes, I was just confused. Mrs. Crow, are you feeling better? Allison nodded without looking at him. Her fingers grabbed the edge of the table like a life preserver. And everything is fine. Allison sat at the dining table, clutching a glass of water. Garrett fussed around her, pulling his chair closer and casting worried glances that she studiously avoided. Lily stood nearby, fiddling with the hem of her sweater, her face a mixture of anxiety and confusion. And opposite, across the table, sat Trevor, the same Trevor, whose face was now for Allison not just the face of her daughter's fiancé, but a living reminder of her shame. Eli, are you sure you're okay? Garrett's voice sounded soft, but there was tension in it. He placed his hand on her shoulder, squeezing lightly. Maybe you should lie down. I can take you upstairs. Allison shook her head, forcing herself to smile. The smile came out crooked, like a doll that had been beaten too much. No, Garrett, I'm fine. Just tired. I've been cooking all day, that's all. Let's have dinner. I don't want to ruin the evening. Garrett frowned but nodded. He pulled away and clapped his hands, turning to Lily and Trevor. Okay, people, the show is over. Sit down. I'll bring the chicken now. Trevor, I hope you're hungry because Ollie has outdone herself. Lily smiled faintly, glancing at her mother before sitting down next to Trevor. Mom, you really scared me, she said, her voice shaking. You've never fainted before. Maybe it's your blood pressure, your age. Have you been to the doctor for a long time? Allison swallowed, feeling the lump in her throat growing larger. She forced herself to look at her daughter, her big blue eyes, the same as her own, full of sincere care. Her heart sank with guilt. It's okay, Lily, she said quietly. I was just worried. You know how worried I am about such evenings. Lily nodded, but her gaze was still wary. She turned to Trevor, nudging him lightly with her elbow. Trev, say something. You have been silent all evening, as if you were forced to come here. Trevor coughed, his fingers tapping nervously on the table. He looked up, trying to look casual, but his green eyes flickered to Allison for a split second before settling on Lily. Sorry, Lil, he said, his voice a little hoarse. Just a little confused. It's not every day that your future mother-in-law falls right before your eyes. Mrs. Crow, are you sure you don't need help? Allison flinched at the sound of his voice. This voice low, with a slight hoarseness, she heard it that night in the club when he whispered something in her ear while her friends laughed outside the door. She squeezed the glass even harder, afraid that it would crack in her hands. No, Trevor, thank you, she managed, without looking at him. I'm fine. Sit down and eat. Garrett returned with a tray of golden chicken surrounded by potatoes and rosemary. He placed it on the table proudly, as if it were a trophy. Here, enjoy, he announced, sitting down at the head of the table. Trevor, tell me how you and Lily met. She hinted that it was some kind of romantic story, but I don't know the details. Lily perked up, her cheeks turning pink. She put her hand on Trevor's shoulder, clearly enjoying the opportunity to take her mind off the strange start to the evening. Oh, Dad, that was so sweet. Remember when I went to Charleston for the weekend with friends? We went into a coffee shop, and Trevor was sitting there with a laptop, all so serious. I spilled coffee right on his table by accident, of course, and instead of getting angry, he just laughed and offered me a napkin. Trevor smiled, but the smile was forced. He nodded, adding, Yes, she was so clumsy that I couldn't resist. I decided that this was fate. Allison felt her stomach tighten. She looked at her daughter, listened to her enthusiastic voice, and every sound was like a hammer blow on her nerves. Lily didn't know. Nobody knew. And Trevor. He sat here, opposite her, and talked about fate, as if that Saturday night when fate confronted them at the Neon Pulse Club never happened. She remembered everything too vividly. The strobe lights, the pulsating bass, the smell of tequila and his hands pulling her into the cramped booth. Her friends then shouted, Eli, break away, you're not an old woman. And she broke away. Oh gods, how she came away. Eli, why are you hanging out again? Garrett's voice pulled her out of her memories. He looked at her with a plate in his hands, already serving her a piece of chicken. Eat, otherwise it will get cold. Yes, of course, she muttered, picking up her fork. Her hand shook, and she quickly hid it under the table, clutching her knee. Everything looks delicious. Trevor was silent, picking at the food on his plate. His gaze kept flicking to Allison, but he immediately looked away, as if he was afraid that someone would notice. Lily, on the other hand, chatted incessantly, telling how Trevor once fixed her laptop in 5 minutes and then asked her out on a date. Garrett laughed, poured wine for everyone, and even made a couple of jokes about it, people who save the world from blue screens. But Allison didn't hear anything. Her world narrowed to the sound of her own pulse in her ears, and to this guy opposite who knew her secret. Mom, what do you think? Lily suddenly turned to her, her voice breaking Allison out of her trance. Trevor is cool, isn't he? Allison froze, fork in hand. Her throat tightened, as if someone had tightened a noose around it. She forced herself to look up, meeting Trevor's eyes. There was something in them, either fear or challenge. She swallowed, trying to find the words. Yeah, he seems like a nice guy, she finally managed. Lily, you're happy, That's the main thing. Lily beamed, squeezing Trevor's hand. I'm so glad you accepted it. Really, Trev? Trevor nodded, his lips twitching into a faint smile. Yes, Lil. Very. Glad. Allison looked down at her plate. The food seemed to her like a piece of cardboard that she could not swallow. She felt Trevor looking at her, furtively but steadily, and this silence between them was louder than any scream. They both knew the truth, and both understood that this evening was just the beginning. Garrett, not noticing anything, raised his glass. For the family, he declared. And for Trevor, who, I hope, will withstand Eli and me. We're not that scary, right, honey? Allison forced a laugh, raising her glass. Her hand trembled, the wine splashed over the edge, leaving a red stain on the tablecloth. That's right, she whispered. Well, Trevor, how do you like chicken? Garrett poked his fork into the air, grinning. Eli marinated it for 3 hours, so if you say it's not tasty, I'll personally kick you out. Trevor looked up from his plate, where he had been picking at the same piece of potato for 5 minutes. His lips twitched into a faint smile, but his eyes remained empty, as if he was looking through Garrett. Very tasty, Mr. Crow, he said quietly. You're right, Mrs. Crow is a real master. Allison flinched when she heard her name from his lips. Thank you, Trevor, she muttered. I tried. Lily laughed, slapping Trevor on the shoulder. Oh, Mom, he's just polite. Trev, you love spicy food, but here everything is so. Homemade. Although, I admit, the chicken is really cool. Garrett winked at his daughter as he cut himself another piece. You see, Trevor, we have family traditions here. Eli cooks, I eat, and Lily praises me. Now it's your turn to join in. How was dinner in your family? Trevor coughed, putting down his fork. He rubbed his neck, as if the collar of his shirt had suddenly become too tight for him. With us, it's usually simple. Mom ordered pizza, Father watched football. Nothing special. Pizza then? Garrett chuckled, pouring himself some wine. Well, now your level is higher. Welcome to the world of real food. Lily, tell me how you made him give up pizza for your salads. Lily rolled her eyes, but her smile grew even wider. She turned to Trevor, beaming like a light bulb. Oh, that was funny. On our first date, I ordered a shrimp salad and he ordered a burger. I said, Trevor, if you want to impress me, eat something green. And he actually ordered a salad on the second date. Garrett laughed, slamming his hand down on the table. Well done, guy. Listen to Lily and everything will be fine. Eli, remember how I tried to talk you into drinking beer instead of wine? And you tell me, Garrett, I'm not a redneck. Allison forced out a laugh, but it sounded like someone had stepped on a rubber toy. She nodded, looking at her plate. Yes, it was, she said quietly. Then you drank only wine for a week to prove that you could. Garrett grinned, but his gaze lingered on her a little longer than usual. He noticed that she hardly eats, that her hands tremble when she reaches for a glass. He frowned, but decided not to push yet. Okay, enough about me, he said, turning to Trevor. Tell me, what are you doing? Lily says you're in it, but I don't understand anything about it. Are you making websites there or what? Trevor straightened up, as if glad for the opportunity to be distracted. He cleared his throat, his voice becoming a little more confident. I'm a developer, Mr. Crow. I write code for applications. Currently, I'm working on a project for a startup company, something like a task scheduler. Nothing super complicated, but the pay is okay. Code, then? Garrett squinted as if trying to imagine what it looked like. So you sit and tap on the keys, and then an application appears. Damn, I'd rather hammer nails. Although, if our toaster breaks, will you fix it? Lily giggled, nudging her father with her elbow. Dad, he doesn't fix toasters. He does cool stuff. Show them your app, Trev. Trevor reached into his pocket for his phone, but his movements were constrained, like a robot. He opened the screen, showed some kind of interface with colored buttons, and quickly put the phone back. This is still a beta version, he said. I'm still finalizing it. Allison looked at him out of the corner of her eye. His voice, his gestures, it was all too familiar. She remembered how he stood at the bar at Neon Pulse, holding a glass of something strong, and how he turned to her with that slight smile and said, "You're not like the people around here." Then she laughed, drunk and carefree, and then everything went wrong. "Mom, why are you silent?" Lily's voice pulled her out of her memories. She looked at Allison with slight concern. "You've been so quiet all evening. Don't you like Trevor?" Allison winced, dropping her fork. It clinked on the plate, and everyone turned to it. She quickly bent down, picking it up, and forced a smile. "No, Lily," she said, her voice trembling. "He's good. I'm just tired. You know how worried I am about such dinners." Lily nodded, but her eyebrows furrowed slightly. She looked at Trevor, then back at her mother. "Okay, the main thing is that Dad already loved him." "Really, Dad?" Garrett raised his glass, grinning. "As long as he doesn't break my toaster, I'll accept it." For Trevor, everyone raised their glasses. "Oh, I almost forgot." Lily suddenly jumped up, slapping her forehead. "I brought photos from Charleston. There are such cool sunsets there. I want to show them." She ran out into the corridor to get her bag, leaving the three of them. Garrett turned to Trevor, continuing his questions. "So, are you originally from Charleston, or did you just work there?" "No, I'm from Atlanta," Trevor answered, his voice even but strained. "I went to Charleston on business." "Well, I met Lily." Allison pressed her lips together, feeling sweat running down her back. She couldn't sit anymore. Her chest felt tight, as if someone had tightened a corset. She stood up abruptly, almost knocking over her chair. "I'll go get some water," she muttered, without looking at them. "My throat is dry." Garrett frowned as he watched her go. "Eli, your glass is full. Are you sure you're okay?" "Yes, everything's fine," she said over her shoulder, almost running into the kitchen. Trevor stared after her, his fingers curling around his glass. He took another sip, feeling the wine burn his throat. Garrett shook his head, muttering, "She's strange today. Okay, Trevor, tell me more. What kind of startup is this?" But Trevor barely listened. His thoughts were in the kitchen with Allison. He knew that she did not go for water. She ran away. How did she escape then? The kitchen was Allison's sanctuary, her fortress of white marble and gleaming steel where she could hide from the looks, the voices, and that suffocating feeling that had been squeezing her chest all evening. Dinner was still going on in the living room. She could hear snatches of Garrett's laughter, Lily's ringing voice, and Trevor's rare, terse remarks. The door creaked and Allison tensed, not turning around. The steps heavy, confident could only belong to one person. "Eli, why did you run away?" Garrett's voice was soft, but there was a hint of concern in it. He came closer, stopping behind her. "I told you, you don't have to pretend to be a heroine. If you're tired, go upstairs. I'll deal with the guests." Allison took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. She turned around, putting on a weak smile that looked more like a grimace. "I'm not running away, Garrett," she said, trying to keep her voice even. "I just had a headache. I wanted to drink water in silence." Garrett narrowed his eyes, crossing his arms over his chest. His dark eyes studied her face pale, with dark circles, which she had so carefully covered with foundation in the morning. He stepped closer, placing his hand on her shoulder. "You haven't been yourself all evening," he said, lowering his voice. "It's because of Trevor, right? Don't you like him?" Allison froze, her heart skipped a beat. She opened her mouth to object, but the words got stuck somewhere in her throat. Instead, she shook her head, too quickly, too harshly. "No, no," she squeezed out. "He's normal. Lily is happy, that's the main thing." Garrett chuckled, not looking away. He knew her too well. 23 years together are not in vain. He saw how she winced as she lied, how her fingers fiddled with the edge of her apron, as she did now. "Normal then?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Then why don't you even look at him? I thought you would question him, be interested." And hear silence as in a coffin. Allison swallowed, feeling the heat rise to her cheeks. She turned away, grabbed the glass from the counter, and took a long sip just to buy time. The water was ice cold, but it didn't help. Everything inside was burning. I'm just tired, Garrett, she repeated, putting the glass back. You know, I didn't really sleep because of this dinner. I wanted to do everything perfectly. He nodded, but his face remained serious. He stepped even closer, tilting his head to look into her eyes. Eli, I'm not a fool, he said quietly. If something is wrong, tell me. We're a team, right? You, me, Lily, we always decided everything together. His words hit her like a fist in the solar plexus. Team. Family. Everything she put on the line that drunken night at the club when her friends dragged her to Neon Pulse to shake things up. It's okay, she said, looking away. Is it true? Go to Lily, she shows pictures there. I'll be right back. Garrett sighed, rubbing the back of his head. He clearly wanted to say something else, but changed his mind. Okay, he muttered, but if you change your mind, I'm here. And don't sit here all night, otherwise Lily will decide that you don't like her fiancé. He left, leaving behind a slight smell of cologne and the feeling that her lies were becoming thinner, like paper that was about to be torn by the wind. Allison leaned against the countertop, closing her eyes. Her hands were shaking, and she hid them in the pockets of her apron, clenching her fists. He won't say anything, she whispered to herself. Nobody knows. It's just an evening. Just a guy. Just a coincidence. Dinner ended around 10. Lily and Trevor left, leaving behind empty plates, a bouquet of roses on the counter, and a bottle of whiskey, which Garrett immediately opened to relax. Allison cleared the table, moving automatically, collecting cutlery, brushing away crumbs, wiping away wine stains. Garrett sat in the living room, sipping a glass of whiskey and flipping through the channels on the TV. The silence in the house was heavy, like damp air before a thunderstorm. She went upstairs when the clock struck midnight. Garrett was already in the bedroom, sprawled out on the bed in just a t-shirt and shorts. The light of the night lamp fell on his face, emphasizing wrinkles that she had not noticed before. He looked tired, but was not sleeping. He was waiting for her. Well, Mrs. Crow, he said when she came in, how do you like our future son-in-law? Normal guy, huh? Allison paused at the door, pulling off her apron. Her fingers fiddled with the ties, getting tangled in the knots. She nodded without turning around. Yes, it seems normal, she answered quietly. Lily adores him, it's obvious. Garrett chuckled, taking another sip. Apparently, he agreed, and you were on pins and needles all evening. I thought maybe he spat in your soup while I wasn't looking. Allison forced out a laugh, but it came out as dry as sand. She threw the apron on the chair and went to the chest of drawers, taking out a nightgown. Don't make things up, she said, trying to seem nonchalant. I just had a headache, I told you. Garrett put the glass on the nightstand and sat down, leaning on his elbow. His gaze became sharp as a blade. Eli, that's enough, he said, his voice becoming firmer. I know you. You're not like this because of your head. What's wrong with you? Is this Trevor? Or Lily? Or did I do something? Allison turned to him, feeling the floor disappear from under her feet. His eyes, dark, serious, glared at her, and she realized that he would not leave behind. Garrett was as stubborn as a bull, especially when he sensed that something was being hidden from him. She clutched the shirt in her hands, holding it to her chest like a shield. You didn't do anything, she said, her voice shaking. And Trevor has nothing to do with it. I'm just exhausted. He looked at her for a few more seconds, then sighed and leaned back against the pillows. Okay, he muttered, but if something is gnawing at you, tell me. I don't want you to be silent like that at work. Allison nodded, remembering how 3 years ago she hid the fact that she was fired from the office for a week until Garrett brought out the truth over dinner. Then he hugged her and said that everything would work out. But now there was no one to hug her. She dug this hole herself and now stood on the edge, balancing over the abyss. She changed in the bathroom and washed her face with cold water, hoping to wash away at least some of the tension. But the mirror reflected a woman she barely recognized, pale, with dull eyes and compressed lips. She returned to the bedroom, turned off the light, and lay down next to Garrett, trying not to touch him. He was already breathing evenly, but she knew that he was not sleeping, he was just giving her space. Allison lay looking at the ceiling. Sleep did not come. She squeezed the blanket, feeling tears welling up in her eyes. She didn't sleep that night, not a minute. And when Garrett left for work in the morning and Lily called to chat about Trevor, Allison realized this was just the beginning. Allison stood in front of the bathroom mirror, looking at her reflection, but her thoughts were far away on that Saturday night, which now hung over her like the sword of Damocles. She didn't want to remember. She tried to erase that evening from her memory, to cover it up like a stain on a tablecloth. But it returned again and again, bright as the neon lights of the Neon Pulse Club. Her fingers gripped the edge of the sink as she looked at her tired eyes. This was a week ago. Saturday began with a minor quarrel, nothing serious, just another injection into her and Garrett's routine life. He wanted to go fishing with friends. She wanted him to stay home and help dismantle the garage. Eli, I've been working hard all month, he said then, standing at the door with a fishing rod in his hands. Give me one day, okay? The garage isn't going anywhere. She flared up not because of the garage, but because of the way he looked at her, with slight irritation, as if he were looking at old furniture that was long overdue for updating. Of course, Garrett, rest, she said, slamming the closet door. And I'll be here alone, as always. He left, muttering something about, "You're going too far," and the house was empty. Allison was left with a mountain of unspoken grievances and the feeling that her life was an endless cycle of cooking, cleaning, and waiting. She was 42, but it seemed like 60. She looked at herself in the mirror at the first wrinkles, at the hair that no longer shined as before, and asked, "Is this all? Is this my youth?" The phone rang at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was Kate, her friend from school, who always sounded like she had just won the lottery. "Eli, stop being sour," Kate said without preamble. "The girls and I are going to Neon Pulse today. You are with us. No excuses." Allison laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. "Kate, I'm 42, not 22. I haven't been to clubs in 100 years. And what did I forget there? Myself, that's what," Kate snapped. "You're not an old woman, Eli." Garrett left to catch his fish. Lily is somewhere with friends. Have a blast for once. Put on your dress, do your hair, and let's go. We'll pick you up at 8. Allison wanted to refuse, but something in Kate's voice or her own anguish made her agree. She opened her closet and pulled out a low-cut black dress that she hadn't worn since her and Garrett's trip to Vegas 5 years ago. It still fit perfectly, emphasizing her figure, which she diligently kept in shape through yoga and dieting. She put on makeup, let her hair down, put on heels, and, looking in the mirror, for the first time in a long time, she felt not just a wife and mother, but a woman. Neon Pulse greeted her like another world. The music hit your ears, the bass reverberated in your chest, and the neon lights blue, pink, purple turned the crowd into a kaleidoscope of shadows. Kate, Melanie, and Sarah, her friends, were already there, laughing at the bar with cocktails in their hands. "Eli, you are beautiful," Sarah shouted, handing her a glass of something bright green. "Drink, it's margarita. Today we're having a blast." Allison took a sip, wincing at the sweet and sour taste. She felt out of place, too old for this place, too out of place among the 20-somethings who danced like there was no tomorrow. But Kate dragged her onto the dance floor, and she began to move to the rhythm of some remix. At first hesitantly, then freer. The music drowned out her thoughts, the alcohol eased the tension, and for the first time in months, she didn't think about Garrett or Lily or the dirty dishes in the sink. After the third shot of tequila, everything became a blur. Kate was shouting something about meeting youth. Melanie was flirting with the bartender, and Sarah was pulling her towards a table where some group of guys were offering drinks. Allison laughed loudly, uncontrollably, as in her youth. Her heels clicked on the floor, her dress clung to her body with sweat, and she felt alive. And then he appeared. She didn't know his name, then just a tall guy with dark hair and stubble who stood at the bar with a bottle of beer in his hand. He caught her gaze and smiled not impudently, but warmly, almost shyly. Allison, drunk and liberated, smiled back. "You're not like these people," he said over the music as she moved closer to take another shot. "Do you look like that?" she said, feeling the tequila making her head spin. He laughed as he stepped towards her. "Maybe not. Can you dance?" She didn't know how, not like these girls around her, but she nodded. He took her hand, and they found themselves on the dance floor. His palm was warm, slightly rough, and this touch sent shivers down her spine. They moved to some chaotic track, he joked, she laughed, and at some point she realized that she didn't care about anything. The toilet stall was cramped and smelled of bleach and cheap perfume. Allison vaguely remembered how they got there. I think he said, "Come on, it's too noisy," and she went, giggling like a schoolgirl. The door slammed shut, and he pushed her against the wall. She did not resist alcohol, and adrenaline drowned out everything except the desire to feel desired. It was fast, dirty, and mindless. The walls were shaking from the bass, someone was knocking on the door, but they didn't care. Allison didn't think about the consequences, she didn't think at all. I just felt it. And then, when it was all over, she pushed him away, straightened her dress, and ran out of the booth without looking back. Kate found her at the bar, drunk and disheveled, and took her home. Allison collapsed on her bed at 3 in the morning and woke up in the morning with a hangover and the feeling that she had done something irreparable. Now, standing in the bathroom of her house, she looked at herself in the mirror and saw the wrong woman from the club, brave, lively, free. She saw the coward who hid that night under a layer of lies and was now paying for it. Trevor wasn't just the guy from Neon Pulse. He was her daughter's fiancé. And he sat at her table, ate her chicken, and looked into her eyes. Her secret was no longer hers alone, it became theirs. She turned off the bathroom light and returned to the bedroom, where Garrett was already asleep, snoring quietly. Allison sat on the living room couch, wrapping her arms around herself as if trying to hold on to the warmth that had long since left her body. 2 days have passed. Garrett went to work. He managed a small construction company, and on Mondays he always disappeared until the evening. Lily left for college, leaving a note on the refrigerator. "Mom, I'll call you later, I love you." The house was empty, and this silence weighed on Allison more than the screams. She turned on the TV to drown out her thoughts, but the voice of the morning show host sounded like a distant noise, meaningless and annoying. And then the phone rang. She shuddered, opening her eyes. The screen lit up, and the name on it made her heart skip a beat. Unknown number. "Hello?" Her voice was hoarse, as if after a long cry. There was a pause at the other end of the line, heavy, viscous, like tar, and then she heard him. "Allison," Trevor said, and his voice was low, tense, like a string ready to snap. "We need to talk." Her breathing hitched. She jumped up from the sofa, clutching the phone until it almost slipped from her fingers. "Why the hell are you calling?" she hissed, her voice trembling with rage and fear. "Where did you get my number?" "I took it from Lily." "You shouldn't have called," she said, trying to keep her voice even. "It was a mistake. Everything that happened. It doesn't mean anything. Forget." Trevor grinned shortly, bitterly, and the sound cut her like a knife. "Forget?" he asked again. "Are you serious? I'm sitting at the table with your family, eating your chicken, and you faint when you see me. And you say, forget?" "It was drunken stupidity," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't know who you were. You didn't know who I was. This shouldn't have happened." "But it happened," he snapped. "And now I'm your daughter's fiancé. Do you even understand what situation I'm in? Lily wants a wedding, Garrett taps me on the shoulder, and I look at you and see that night. Can you imagine how I feel?" She finally blurted out. "I have a family, Trevor, husband, daughter, house, everything I built for 23 years. And you are now part of it. You are destroying everything." "I was drunk," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "This is all. I didn't think so." "What were you thinking?" He chuckled, but there was no amusement in the sound. "Drunk," he repeated. "Comfortable. What should I do now? What will I say? Sorry, Lil, I can't look at your mom because her—" "Shut up," Allison shouted, her voice echoing off the walls. She put her hand to her mouth, afraid the neighbors would hear. Don't you dare say it out loud. Never. Trevor fell silent, but his silence was louder than words. She heard him breathing, the chair creaking beneath him. He was clearly sitting somewhere, clutching the phone as tightly as she did. I won't tell, he said finally, but I need to know that you won't break. You almost gave us away at dinner. If you mess up like that again, Lily will notice. Or Garrett. And then what? Allison slid down the wall to the floor, her knees buckling. She sat holding the phone to her ear and felt tears running down her cheeks. I won't lose it, she whispered. I swear, just. Don't call me anymore. Don't write. Come to this dinner, smile, pretend that nothing happened. For Lily's sake. For Lily's sake, he repeated, and there was a hint of bitterness in his voice. What about me? I love her, Allison. I don't want to lose her. I also made a mistake. But every time I see you, I think about what we did, and I'm sick. Her heart sank. She didn't want to hear it. She didn't want to know what he felt, that he was suffering too. It made him too real, too close. I'm sick too, she admitted, her voice trembling. But we can't change anything. It happened, and now we have to live with it. Be silent, that's all. Trevor sighed long, tiredly. Okay, he said finally, I will remain silent. But if you can't handle it, Allison, if you mess it up, I won't cover for you. I won't lose Lily because of you. He hung up the call, leaving her with a ringing tone. Allison dropped her phone to the carpet, clasping her head in her hands. Her body was shaking, tears dripped onto her knees, leaving dark stains on her jeans. She sat for a long time until the light outside the window began to fade, turning the living room into a gray cage. Trevor was right. She could have broken. It was already cracking at the seams like old fabric that had been pulled too long. But she had no choice. For Garrett's sake, for Lily's sake, for the sake of the life she had built, she had to control herself. In the evening, Lily decided to take a break. She turned on the music something light, with guitar strumming, and began to prepare dinner. Pasta with pesto sauce, her favorite. But thoughts still revolved around Trevor. She remembered how he behaved after dinner at his parents'. When they drove home, he was silent the whole way, looking out the window while she chatted about how Dad joked about toasters. And then, at her entrance, he hugged her so tightly that she was surprised, as if he was afraid that she would disappear. Trev, what are you doing? She asked, laughing. I won't run away. He smiled, but the smile was crooked. I just love you, he said, and left without looking back. Now, stirring the sauce in the pan, Lily began to think. Maybe it's in her family. Mom behaved strangely. She fell, was silent all evening, and ran into the kitchen. Dad also noticed, even asked her yesterday on the phone. Lil, is your mom okay? She doesn't seem to be herself. Lily shrugged it off then, but now these pieces were adding up to a disturbing picture. She turned off the stove and grabbed the phone, dialing Trevor's number. He answered after the third ring, his voice sleepy. Lil, did something happen? He asked. No, nothing happened, she said, trying to appear calm. I just wanted to hear from you. Are you really sleeping? He coughed, and she heard the rustling of sheets. Almost, he replied. Just lay down. What are you doing? I'm cooking pasta, she said, fiddling with the hem of her t-shirt. I was thinking about you. Are you? Are you sure you're okay? You're different after dinner. Trevor fell silent. Lily waited, listening to his breathing, her heart beating faster with each passing second. I'm fine, Lil, he said finally, but his voice was tight as a string. I don't know, I'm tired. Your dad is cool, and so is your mom, but I probably got too nervous. She frowned as she sat down on the edge of the couch. Are you nervous? She asked again. Trev, you're not afraid of my parents. You said to yourself that you liked Garrett. Or, is it because of Mom? She was acting strange, right? He coughed again, louder, as if he was choking. No, he said quickly. She's just tired, I guess. As you said, it's okay, Lil. Don't make things up. But Lily couldn't help but come up with ideas. She knew Trevor knew how he laughed when he was happy, how he frowned when he was angry. And now he was lying. She felt it in his voice, in his pauses, in the way he was in a hurry to end the conversation. "Okay," she said, clutching the phone. "Then sleep. See you tomorrow?" "Yes, tomorrow," he answered, and relief flashed in his voice. "Good night, Lil." "Calm down," she muttered, hanging up the call. She threw the phone on the sofa, looking at him like he was a traitor. Her fingers clenched into fists. Something was wrong. Not just fatigue, not just nerves. Trevor was hiding something, and that something had to do with dinner. With her family, maybe with Mom. Lily remembered how Allison avoided looking at Trevor, how her hand shook when she raised her glass. And Trevor, he was strange too quiet, too intense. She got up, went to the window, and looked at the city, which was already turning on the lights. Her happiness, her perfect love with Trevor began to crack like glass under attack. And she knew that if she didn't find out the truth, these cracks would grow until they broke everything into pieces. Tomorrow she will talk to him, or with Mom, or with both. But she won't let this something ruin her life. It had been 3 days since that dinner when their daughter brought Trevor home. 3 days, and Garrett still couldn't get out of his head how Allison acted that night. She fell, yes, but it wasn't just a fall. Her face turned chalk white, her eyes rolled back, as if she had seen a ghost. And then all evening she was a shadow of herself. Silent, trembling, ran into the kitchen, as if she could not bear their company. Garrett knew his wife. Allison could grumble, argue, even scream if something was wrong, but she never hid. And now she was hiding from him, from Lily, from everything. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Maybe he's exaggerating. Allison said she was tired and had a headache. But her words sounded empty, like the sound of glass that was about to break. Garrett trusted her 23 years together. Damn it, this is no joke. They've been through everything. Job loss, illness, even the year when Lily was almost kicked out of school for fighting. Allison has always been his support, his anchor. But now this anchor seemed fake, as if someone had replaced it with a plastic toy. The phone vibrated in his pocket, and Garrett pulled it out, looking at the screen. Message from Lily. "Dad, are you home in the evening? I want to stop by and chat." He smiled. His girl always knew how to lighten the mood. "I will, Lil. Bring Trevor if he wants," he wrote back and put the phone away. But the smile quickly faded from his face. Trevor, maybe that's the problem. Garrett remembered the guy. Tall, quiet, with dark eyes that looked either wary or guilty. He was polite, yes, but something about him didn't add up. Garrett couldn't explain it. It was just instinct, like a dog sniffing out a stranger. And Allison. She didn't even look at him at dinner. Never. It was strange. She always questioned Lily's boys, joked, and tested their strength. And with Trevor, nothing. Only trembling hands, and this look full of horror. He slammed his hand on the steering wheel, cursing out loud. "Damn, Garrett, you're paranoid," he muttered, but his voice sounded uncertain. He got out of the car, slamming the door, and headed towards the office, where the drawings and the smell of freshly brewed coffee awaited him. At home, he was greeted by the smell of fried onions and garlic. Allison was preparing something in the kitchen. He kicked off his shoes at the door, hung his jacket on the hook, and walked inside, trying to look normal. She stood at the stove, stirring sauce in a frying pan, her hair pulled back into a loose ponytail. She was wearing Garrett's old sweater, which she liked to wear around the house, and jeans that were frayed at the knees. She looked comfortable, familiar, but something was wrong. "Hello, honey," he said, coming closer. He hugged her from behind, burying his nose in her neck. "It smells delicious. What are you cooking?" Allison tensed under his hands, barely noticeable, but he felt it. She turned her head, smiling forcefully. "Hello," she replied. "Lasagna. Lily loves meat, so she decided to make it." Garrett nodded, releasing her. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, and watched her work quickly, almost frantically, as if she was afraid to stop. "Lily called," he said, watching her reaction. "She said she'd be there by 7. Maybe he'll bring Trevor." Allison froze, her hand holding the spoon hovering over the frying pan. She didn't turn around, but Garrett saw her shoulders rise as if she was holding her breath. "Okay," she finally said, continuing to stir the sauce. Let him bring it. He narrowed his eyes, feeling irritation boiling inside him. She did it again, avoided the conversation. Garrett stepped toward her, placing his hand on the counter next to the stove. "Eli," he said, his voice becoming firmer. "What's going on with you? You've been kind of lost since dinner. I'm not blind." She turned to him, her blue eyes meeting his dark ones. Panic flashed through them, but she immediately hid it behind a smile weak, artificial. "Garrett, I'm fine," she said, her voice too high. "You're making it up. I'm just tired. How many times should I talk?" "I'm tired," he repeated, squinting. "You always say that when you don't want to tell the truth. Do you remember how it was with work? You were silent for a week until I got it out of you that you were fired. What now, Eli? Is it because of Trevor?" Her face turned pale, the spoon fell from her hand and clattered on the edge of the frying pan. She quickly bent down, picking it up, and turned away, hiding her gaze. "No, not because of Trevor," she said, her voice shaking. "Why did you even remember him? He's a normal guy. Lily loves him." Garrett looked at her, feeling a knot of doubt growing inside him. She was lying. He saw it in her trembling fingers, in the way she avoided his eyes, in the way her voice became thinner with every word. "Maybe normal," he said slowly, "but you didn't even look at him at dinner. And when he came, you almost lost consciousness. What was that, Eli? And don't tell me about fatigue." She pursed her lips, her hand hovering over the stove. Garrett waited, his heart pounding in his chest like a hammer. She was silent for so long that he thought there would be no answer. But then she turned, her face tense as a mask. "It was just a faint, Garrett," she said, her voice cold. "I didn't sleep, I cooked all day, that's all." "Stop looking for what isn't there." He looked at her, trying to find at least a drop of truth in her eyes. But there was only a wall high, impenetrable. Garrett nodded, stepping back. "Okay," he said quietly, "if you say so. But I'm not a fool, Eli. If something is wrong, I will know." He went into the living room, leaving her alone at the stove. Allison stared after him, her fingers gripping the edge of the counter. She knew he wouldn't give up. Garrett smelled lies like a hunter smells game, and if he starts digging, her fragile world will collapse faster than she can blink. The next day, Garrett drove from the office to the house in 15 minutes, but it seemed to him that an eternity had passed. His hands were still gripping the steering wheel when he parked the car in front of the garage. There was a struggle going on inside him, reason versus feelings. The mind tried to say, "Leave her alone, Allison is just tired." But the feelings screamed something completely different. "Your wife is lying." And the longer he thought about it, the louder the scream became. "I know she's hiding something," he repeated to himself as he got out of the car. "Damn, I feel it with every fiber of my being." He remembered her pale face that evening when Lily and Trevor entered the house. Allison's gaze was full of horror, and definitely not because of some kind of banal dizziness. He closed the door behind him, muffledly cursing. The keys were stuck in the lock. The inside of the house smelled of lasagna with tomato sauce, and his stomach instantly began to growl, although his appetite seemed to have disappeared 3 days ago. He walked into the living room, threw his jacket over the back of the chair, and stood silently for several seconds, listening to the sounds from the kitchen. "Hello," Allison called quietly, without her usual smile. Usually, she would peek out from the kitchen with a napkin in her hands, or would already rush to him, asking, "How was your day? Aren't you tired? Would you like something to drink?" But now there is silence and strict formality. Garrett entered the kitchen and saw his wife at the stove. Her shoulders were tense and her hair was pulled back into a messy bun. She looked familiar and unrecognizable at the same time. He came closer, stood behind her, hugged her, and immediately felt how she shuddered, as if a cold current had run through her from his touch. "How are you?" he asked quietly. She held her breath briefly before pulling away, almost imperceptibly, but still enough for him to feel it. "Fine. Everything is fine," she said, and turned to the frying pan, not letting him see her face. At that moment, Garrett knew it was time to stop beating around the bush. She would apparently continue to lie to him, but he was not going to remain idle. If she doesn't want to tell the truth, he will force the truth out. That evening, Lily was sitting in an old car parked near a roadside cafe. Trucks slowly pulled past, and the sun was already setting. Notifications from social networks constantly popped up on her phone. Friends asked if she would go to the concert on Friday. Fellow students bombarded her with chats about her school project. But Lily didn't care about all this. She needed to figure out the main thing: what was happening to Trevor and what was happening to her mother. She stared at the phone screen, hoping Trevor would text something. Over the past few days, he had become withdrawn, responding to messages in monosyllables, okay and okay. Neither the usual emoticons nor voices full of jokes and care. His voice on the phone sounded like he was speaking through force, like a man who was pushed against the wall and forced to lie. Maybe he has problems at work, she thought. But why then does Mom behave equally strangely? A minute later, she resolutely dialed her father's number. At least you could talk to him directly. He was always frank. He couldn't lie, although he loved to brag about his brutality. "Dad, hi," she said when she heard his low yes in the tube. "Listen, are you home? I want to come over and talk." "Hello, baby. I'm home. Come by 7. Your mom is cooking lasagna here." At the mention of Allison, Lily felt another pang in her chest. "Mom, I need to talk to Mom," she decided. "Okay, I'll be there soon." And, "Dad," she added hesitantly, "are you all right? Didn't you quarrel?" "No," Garrett answered slowly. "At least they didn't quarrel openly." She caught a familiar firmness in his voice, the same one that sounded when her father did not want to show emotions, but his emotions were stormy. Something is clearly going on, Lily thought, dropping the call. And I have to find out what. That same day, late in the evening, Trevor sat in his room, staring at his laptop monitor, where lines of code were flashing. But instead of them, Allison's face stood before her eyes, frightened, confused at the very moment when she recognized him. The thought of what happened between them haunted him day and night. He was sick of himself, of lies. He loved Lily sincerely, deeply, until his hands trembled at the thought of a future together. But when she talked about the wedding, showed him blogs of wedding photographers and dresses, he almost physically felt the noose tightening around his neck. "I slept with her mother," he heard his own inner voice. And it wasn't just something wrong, it was like a death sentence. The phone rang. He looked at the screen. Lily. My heart sank to my feet. He couldn't talk to her, now all his strength was spent on holding on in her presence. But to reset it means to give rise to new suspicions. In the end, he made up his mind and answered. "Hello, Lil." "Trev, hi. Listen, I'm going to see my parents. Dad said Mom is making lasagna. Maybe you'll come too." Lily's voice did not have that previous sunny tone. She was clearly nervous, waiting for him to refuse. "You know," he said, trying to keep his voice from shaking, "I still have work to do. The project is on fire. The boss demands reports. Maybe another time." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Lily sighed. "Understand. Okay, call me later, okay? We haven't really talked for a long time." "I'll definitely call," he lied, and his heart sank again. When he turned off the call, his palms were sweaty. "I'm making Lily cry," he thought bitterly. "And for what? Because we did one stupid, drunken thing with her mother." He got out of bed, walked around the room, then stopped at the window. The neighbor's dog barked sadly somewhere behind the fence. "How much longer can I live like this?" he asked himself. What if Allison breaks down and tells the truth? Remembering Garrett's gaze, he felt a prickly shiver in his spine. Garrett was a big man, strong physically and internally, and if he found out, "He'll kill us both," Trevor thought grimly. But something else was even more terrible: losing Lily, losing the one with whom he wanted to connect his life. "Lily," he whispered quietly, pressing his forehead against the cold glass. "What should I do?" At exactly 7, Lily entered her parents' house, quietly closing the door behind her. There was a smell of cheese and spices, and somewhere in the living room a radio was playing. She shivered chillily, as if suddenly feeling a draft. The house was warm, but the atmosphere disturbed her to the point of goosebumps. "Mom, Dad," she called. Garrett came out of the living room, wiping his hands with a napkin. He smiled at his daughter, although the smile was forced. "Hello, Lil. Take off your clothes. Come in. Lasagna is almost ready." She threw her sneakers aside, hung her jacket on the hanger, and walked into the kitchen, where she saw her mother. She stood by the oven, checking the lasagna pan. A smile appeared on Allison's face at the sight of her daughter, but her eyes remained intense. "Lily, hi," she said, trying to sound cheerful. "Sit down. Now we'll have dinner. Do you want lemonade?" Lily felt a polite detachment, as if she was greeted not by her daughter, but by an unfamiliar hostess of the house. "Mom, is everything okay?" she asked quietly, without leaving the threshold. Allison froze for a second, slammed the oven too quickly, and almost burned herself on the hot handle. "Of course," she replied, casting a nervous glance at Garrett. "Sit down, Lil." They sat down at the kitchen table, the two of them with Garrett on one side and Lily opposite. The table was set for four, but the fourth cutlery was put aside. Garrett was the first to break the silence. "So, how was college?" "Okay," Lily replied, shrugging. "The session is coming soon. How are you?" She looked from one parent to the other, feeling as if the tension between them could be cut with a knife. The father tries to be casual, the mother looks at her plate. "Everything is fine with us." Allison seemed to be repeating an old record. Lily sighed and decided to take the bull by the horns. "Are you sure you didn't quarrel? Because you both are acting. Well, strange, to put it mildly. Mom, you've been silent all evening. Dad, you look so. I don't know, wary. What's happened?" Allison almost dropped her fork. Garrett threw a gloomy look at his wife, the same one filled with inner decisions. "Lily," he said quietly, "let's eat first, and then we'll talk." "Fine." The father's usually soft tone sounded harsher than usual. Lily nodded, although the food brought a lump to her throat. She noticed that her mother hardly touched the lasagna. She simply mechanically cut a piece with a fork. The clatter of cutlery sounded louder than anything in the world. Dinner passed without the usual family stories and jokes. Garrett only asked once if Trevor had called, to which Lily replied that he was busy with work. Allison flinched at the mention of Trevor, but remained silent. When everyone was finished, they went into the living room. Lily waited for her father to speak now. Garrett patted the couch next to him, motioning for his daughter to sit next to him. Allison sat down on the chair opposite. Her face remained stony. "Lil," Garrett finally said, rubbing the bridge of his nose, "I don't know how to start." "Dad, what's going on?" Fear broke through Lily's voice. "I've been feeling for days now that there's something very serious between you." "Mom." She turned to Allison. "Mom, maybe you can tell me." Allison clenched her fingers, her knees shaking slightly. She looked at Garrett, a pleading look, as if she hoped that he would take his word and let her go from the inevitable. But Garrett just clenched his teeth and shook his head. "Speak, Eli," he said quietly, "or you'll have to tell me." "What are you?" Lily began, but her words were drowned in the silence that hung between the parents. Allison felt a chill running down her spine. "Lily," she began hoarsely, "remember how I fainted when you and Trevor arrived? This is for a reason." "I thought so," Lily breathed, not yet understanding where this would lead. "You see," Allison didn't know how to find the words, I wasn't ready for the one who would walk through the door with you." "Mom," Lily frowned, her heart beating faster. "Did you know Trevor before?" She automatically, pointedly called him by name, and at the same time strange guesses flashed through her head. Maybe Mom and Trevor met at some college event, or did he ever come home by mistake? "No, this is all absurd, but—" "I knew," Allison whispered, without looking up. "But not in the way you think." "Stop mumbling," Garrett said impatiently. "Tell her the truth." "The truth?" Lily asked, jumping up from the sofa. Fear overwhelmed her, but even more the desire to understand everything. "What kind of secret are you hiding from me?" Then Allison burst into tears, hiding her face in her hands. A hateful feeling of guilt stuck in her throat, preventing her from breathing. I can't. I can't tell her, she thought. But there was no choice. I. She choked on her words. Do you remember? I sometimes go out with my friends. Well, we went to a club. To have a drink. It was a long time ago. To be more precise, about a week and a half ago, Garrett clarified gloomily, not hiding his contempt. What? Lily stared at her father with widened eyes. Did your mother go to the club? She imagined her mother, a 42-year-old woman who often complained of headaches and housework, suddenly dancing to loud music in a short dress. My daughter couldn't wrap her head around this. Allison cocked her head. Her eyes were full of tears, the brilliance of which only emphasized her despair. Yes, Kate and I and a couple of other friends decided to break away. I was angry with your father. We then quarreled over a trifle, and I drank too much. She took a deep breath, not daring to look Lily in the eyes. There at the club I met. A guy. I didn't know who he was. His name was Trevor. Garrett finished for her. Lily gasped, recoiling as if from an electric shock. No, she said, not believing her own ears. No, it's impossible. I was drunk, Allison was now muttering confusedly, as if in a fever. I didn't understand anything. He came up, we danced. Then, I don't know how it happened, Lily. We, you slept with him, Garrett finished, his voice roaring with rage. With your daughter's fiancé. A married adult woman had sex with a guy almost half her age in the toilet of a nightclub. There was dead silence. Lily looked at her mother as if at a strange woman, and her heart darted between pain, disgust, and disbelief. Mom was all she could whisper. With Trevor? As if breaking the remaining illusions, Allison nodded, dropping her gaze to the floor. I didn't know it was him, Lily, I swear. We were in a club, the lights were flashing, the music was screaming. I didn't even understand his name. This was a terrible mistake. I then left, didn't write anything down, didn't leave him a number. Lily did not recognize her own voice. It seemed to her that it sounded somewhere from the outside. Trevor. Allison closed her eyes. Lord, Lily, you can't imagine how ashamed I am. Ashamed? Lily suddenly shouted, her voice breaking into a scream. Are you ashamed now? She ran her hands through her hair, as if trying to hold on to reality. Memories of Trevor flashed before her eyes. How he told her that he had met a girl by chance in Charleston, but did not mention any connections in Atlanta. God, she thought, he didn't say this, but then, maybe he was lying to me from the very beginning. Garrett, clenching his fists, watched his daughter. He saw her trembling with horror and anger. This sight was almost unbearable for him. His princess, always so cheerful, now stood as if on the ruins of her happiness. Lily, Allison tried to say, I swear, I had no idea who he was then. And when I realized that it was your Trevor, I almost died of fear and guilt. What difference does it make, Mom? Did you know that he is my boyfriend or not? You are married. Your father loves you, and you... Is that why you fainted? The daughter asked dryly, without taking her withering gaze away. Yes, Allison whispered. The shock was too strong. Lily looked at her father. His jaw clenched, his face turned purple with anger, although he tried to speak evenly. And that's why, Garrett muttered, your mother has been wandering around the house like a ghost these last few days. Dad, have you? Known for a long time. Lily clenched her hands into fists. Ever since I saw my mother's reaction to Trevor, I realized that she had clearly seen him before. Pinned her to the wall. She turned around and lied that she had seen him somewhere in the store and didn't recognize him. But then I decided to go deeper, and she was forced to confess. Everything turned upside down inside Lily. She rushed to her mother. So you were going to hide everything. Was she going to lie to me my whole life? Let me marry the guy you slept with. I didn't know what to do, Allison sobbed. I didn't want to ruin your life. Oh, so you didn't want to? Lily gasped with anger. Yes, you already broke it. These words were like a slap in the face for the mother. Allison sobbed louder, pressing her hands to her face. Garrett stood up, taking his daughter by the shoulder. "Lily, calm down," he asked quietly, although he himself could barely cope with his anger. "I understand your pain, but you need—" "What is needed?" Lily pulled out her shoulder. "Do we need to forgive and forget all this?" "No, both of you. God, this is a nightmare. And Trevor, did he know that I was the daughter of the one? Did you know for sure after dinner?" "I knew," Allison answered bitterly. "He called me a couple of days ago. I asked you to be silent." "How noble," Lily smiled wryly, brushing away tears. "So he wanted to save our marriage because he loves me, right? Did you both want to pretend that nothing happened?" "Lily, that's enough. Garrett couldn't stand it. All this shit has already happened. What can you do now?" "What do you suggest, Dad?" she shouted. "Say, well, it doesn't happen to anyone, and get married further. Ugh, it's disgusting to even think about it." The phone rang, cutting through the tension. Lily shuddered and looked at the screen. Trevor. "Well, of course," she thought bitterly. "Apparently she feels something." Bending over the device, she turned to her parents. "I won't hide it. I'll tell him everything now." Allison only breathed convulsively, tightly gripping the armrests of the chair. Lily walked out into the hallway, away from her father and mother, trying to stop her hands from shaking before answering the phone. "Hello?" she said, barely squeezing out the words. "Lil," Trevor's voice sounded excited. "Sorry, I didn't have time to call right away. How are you doing?" She suddenly wanted to swear, to scream into the phone, but something held her back. She didn't want scenes through the phone. She didn't want to lie that everything is fine. "You know," she said quietly, "better tell me how you're doing. And how long ago did you realize that my mother was the same woman from the club?" There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end, and Lily imagined Trevor turning pale. "Lily, do you know everything?" he asked dully. "I know, yes. Mom just confessed. So sorry for breaking you out of your habitual lie. Maybe you could explain how you could even pretend to love me." "Lil, I love you," he blurted out desperately. "I swear this whole thing. It's a terrible mistake. I didn't know it was your mother. And when I found out, I didn't know what to do. I was afraid of losing you. So I decided to hide the truth," Lily said coldly, "so that I marry the man who slept with my mother. No, I didn't want to ruin everything. I thought that we could somehow." "Somehow?" she interrupted him in a sharp tone. "You can't even imagine how disgusting this is to me. How can you live with the thought that one day we will become a family, and you have already been in bed, or rather, in the toilet stall, my mother?" Trevor groaned into the phone. "Lily, don't leave me. I'll explain everything. It was just one drunken misunderstanding. I love only you. I want to spend my life with you." She swallowed. A storm raged in her soul. Part of her still clung to the memories of how gentle, caring, kind he was. But the other part shouted, "Traitor, liar, you will never have peace next to him. I don't know if you can imagine how I feel right now," she said, her voice breaking into tears. "But I know one thing for sure, there will be no marriage. I can't marry a man who—" "You, Trevor, this is too disgusting. Lily," he whispered, and there was a desperate plea in his voice. But she no longer wanted to listen. The rage she could barely contain began to burst out. "Forget me." At that moment, the understanding came that her happiness, her love, everything had crumbled to dust. She leaned against the wall, closing her eyes, and tears flowed in a stream. Garrett and Allison were sitting in the living room at that time. Through the half-closed door, they heard snatches of screams. Garrett tensely clenched his fists, and Allison seemed small, insignificant, ready to fall through the ground. "How could I?" she repeated in a whisper, covering her face with her hands. Allison came out of the living room and found Lily sitting on the floor in the hallway, among the pieces of a broken phone. The daughter cried out loud, like a small child to whom no one came to help. Seeing her mother, Lily jumped up, her face twisted with rage and grief. "Leave," she shouted, taking a step back. "Don't come near me, Lily." Allison gasped. Daughter, I apologize, I beg you. I would give everything if only this wouldn't happen. Late. Lily raised her hands as if defending herself from a monster. Stop it, Allison squealed, feeling her shoot the most painful truth at her. I made a mistake, yes, a terrible mistake. But I love you, Lily. You are my daughter. I never meant to harm you. Shut up, Lily screamed, tears streaming down her cheeks, mixing with her makeup. These words were like a whip lashing Allison's soul. She took an uncertain step towards her daughter, but she recoiled even further. Don't touch me, Lily hissed. The mere sight of you makes me sick. I understand that you are angry, the mother answered breathlessly, and you have every right to be so. But, I beg you, listen to me. Why? Lily laughed bitterly through her tears. Why? Why, when you found out, didn't you tell me right away? I could have learned about this not from you, not from Dad, but from random people. Or on the eve of the wedding. Lily, I didn't know how. Allison tried to justify herself, but she felt that all words were meaningless now. You were afraid for your own skin, the daughter shouted. I was afraid that Dad would find out that I would hate you. Well, in the end, I got all this in addition. Well done, Mom. Allison realized that there was nothing left to say. Any phrase would only make the situation worse. Lily was like a wounded lioness, ready to pounce on anyone who came close. And she, the mother, herself drove her into this hell. Go away, Lily repeated, swallowing the lump in her throat. I don't want to see you. Allison sobbed, raised her hands, indicating that she would not come, and retreated. She felt her legs give way, but she forced herself to walk further along the corridor, towards the stairs to the second floor. A breath of air. She needed to leave before Lily hated her completely. The next day, Garrett was sitting in his office, where he had no plans to come, but he realized that he would go crazy at home. In the morning, Lily went to see her friend, saying almost nothing to her father. She just hugged him briefly and ran away. Allison was daydreaming about the house. The silence was unbearable, and Garrett decided that he needed to work to somehow distract himself. But I couldn't get distracted. Before her eyes stood Lily, distorted in pain, her words full of bitter resentment, and also Allison's face, which showed panic. I didn't think she was capable of this, thought Garrett, tormenting himself with guesses. When he imagined the scene in that damn club, rage began to choke him. He knew that if he saw Trevor, he would not resist fighting. Suddenly, the phone on the table vibrated. The number was unfamiliar, but upon picking up the phone, Garrett immediately recognized the voice as Trevor. Hello, Mr. Crow, he said with a nervous breath. Mr. Crow, huh? Garrett gritted his teeth. Guy, I don't know who gave you this number, but you better. Listen to me, Trevor interrupted, and Garrett was amazed at his courage. I need to talk. With you. Personally. And why would I do this? Garrett was ready to hang up, but curiosity overpowered him. You understand that if I see you, I'll break your nose. Yes, perhaps. But I'm willing to take the risk. I understand that you want to kill me, and you have the right. But I can't live without trying to explain myself. You have nothing to explain, Garrett snapped angrily. You slept with my wife, then you were going to marry my daughter. And all this with a stupid smile on his face. You know, I have long had leaden words in store for such types. I know, Trevor said quietly, but I still ask you to meet. Even for 5 minutes, in a crowded place. I need to say something. Garrett remained silent, squeezing the phone so tightly that the plastic threatened to crack. I felt sick in my heart, but the thought was beating in my head. If I see him, I will have the opportunity to close this topic forever. Maybe it's for the better. Okay, he finally said. At Ray's Cafe in an hour. But remember, if you decide to excuse yourself, No, I'll be there, Trevor quickly answered and hung up. Garrett pulled the computer towards him, trying to finish the drawings, but his hands wouldn't obey. Scoundrel, he thought. Will he beg to forgive him or tell some new version? Allison sat on the kitchen stool with her head in her hands as Garrett walked away. He said briefly, "Don't wait for me for lunch," and slammed the door. She didn't dare ask anything. From the moment Lily learned the terrible truth, a grave atmosphere reigned in the house. At night, she and Garrett slept in the same bedroom, but as if separated by a kilometer-long gap. He lay staring at the ceiling. She turned to the wall, barely holding back tears. How to live further, she asked herself. My daughter hates me. My husband. He just despises me. And I understand him. I despise myself. Memories of the old days with Garrett arose before my eyes when they were madly in love with each other, lived in a tiny rented apartment, had no money, but had a lot of hopes and laughed through any difficulties. How they rejoiced at the birth of Lily, how every morning she met him while he was getting ready for work. Now all this was on the verge of collapse through her fault. She remembered how Garrett had given her a silver crescent moon pendant on their 6th anniversary and said, "You are my light in the night." And now this light has cut off its own path to salvation. Tears flowed from her eyes, falling onto her palms. Did she hope for forgiveness? Were you afraid that it would come? Maybe if Garrett got angry enough to hit her, or kicked her out right away, she would feel better. But he chose the tactic of silent rejection, and this hit her harder than any words. At some point, she groaned and wiped her wet cheeks with the edge of her sweater. Lily needs time, she tried to convince herself. Maybe at least she will be able to forgive. But a voice inside answered, she will not forgive. Never. Ray's Cafe was located on a busy street. People scurried past, clerks, students, couples. Garrett went inside and sat down at a table by the window, which had a good view of the entrance he wanted to see when Trevor appeared. I took black coffee and waited. Trevor arrived 10 minutes later, visibly nervous. He hesitated at the threshold until he noticed Garrett, then, with a resigned sigh, he walked up to the table. "Sit down," Garrett said briefly, gesturing to an empty chair. Trevor sat down, ordered himself some water, and for a few seconds gathered his courage, not daring to speak under Garrett's heavy gaze. "Well?" asked Garrett. "Did you want to say something?" "Yes, Mr. Crow." Trevor was shaking as if from the cold. "First of all, I want to apologize. Although it won't change anything, but I really didn't know that that woman from the club was your wife. I apologized." Next, Garrett crossed his arms, holding back the urge to punch him in the jaw. I love Lily," Trevor continued. "I understand it sounds funny and disgusting after what happened. But I didn't lie to her about my feelings, and I wanted to marry her, build a family, and that drunken night was a pathetic accident." "Pathetic accident?" Garrett muttered, and his voice rang with anger. "Do you seriously think that you could call it a pathetic accident that you slept with her mother?" A few people at nearby tables turned around, but Trevor didn't seem to notice. He was too caught up in his internal drama. "I have no excuses," he said quietly. "I would give everything to prevent this from happening. But it happened, and now Lily has left me." "Looks like you got it," Garrett nodded. "Yes, I want you to leave my daughter alone. You've already caused her enough pain." Trevor closed his eyes, and the expression on his face showed how much each word hurt him. "I won't pursue Lily," he said dully, "if she doesn't want to see me. But I still hope that someday she will hear me, and I beg you, if she ever wants to know how this happened, tell her that I didn't lie about how I felt, that I didn't know who her mother really was." Garrett smiled bitterly. "Do you think this will help at least somehow?" Trevor looked away. "Maybe not, but at least let her know that I'm not one of those who specifically targeted her family. It was a disgusting coincidence." "Trevor," he spoke quietly, "do you know what disgusts me most? That both of you so easily gave in to base desires in the club. You say, I was drunk. Is that an excuse? Animals also copulate when they want, but they don't lie later that they love." "You're right," Trevor whispered, lowering his head. "I can't justify myself." Garrett abruptly pushed back his chair and stood up. "We said everything. I hope I never see you again." When Garrett returned home, the hallway greeted him with silence. He saw Lily's women's shoes. That means his daughter has returned. Throwing off his jacket, He moved into the living room and found Lily there alone, curled up in a ball in an armchair and staring out the window. "Hello," he called quietly. She turned her head, and Garrett noticed how her eyes were swollen from crying. His heart sank with pity. He was ready to give everything just not to see her in such a state. "Hi, Dad." She squeezed out a weak smile. "How are you?" "Don't ask," he sighed, coming closer. "How are you? Did you talk to someone?" Lily shrugged. "With Kate, my mother's friend. She called and asked why Mom wasn't answering her calls and what was going on. I almost lost my temper. I wanted to tell her everything, but I couldn't. She said that my mother had a migraine." "It's good that I didn't say," Garrett nodded. "Fewer people means less gossip. We'll figure it out ourselves." "We ourselves," Lily repeated bitterly. "Where is Mom? Locked yourself in the bedroom?" "Probably." Garrett lowered his gaze. "She didn't come out?" "No." "I don't even want to see her," Lily admitted. "But I can't stop thinking about what happened. It's like some disgusting movie is playing in my head nonstop." Garrett walked around the chair, sat on the armrest, and carefully put his arm around his daughter's shoulders. "I understand. I hate thinking about it too. But we must solve everything." "How to decide?" Lily sighed. "Divorce your mother." She said this almost calmly, and Garrett went cold. It means that her daughter herself had already come to a similar thought. He didn't answer right away. He just stroked her hair. "Lil," he said quietly, "I don't know. Everything is still too fresh. But I definitely won't be able to live as if nothing happened. I don't want to see her, Dad. It's terrible, but when I look at her, it literally turns me over." As she packed her suitcase, Allison felt like she was delirious. Every t-shirt, every dress, every kitchen towel, everything reminded me of the years I lived with Garrett. Here's the sweatshirt she borrowed from him when they went to the mountains. Here is an old towel given to Lily as a housewarming gift when she was still a baby to Mom is embroidered on it. How could I ruin all this? The same thought was spinning in my head, but she knew the answer. One stupid night. When Garrett returned in the evening, she was already standing at the front door with a small suitcase. He looked at her coldly. "Are you leaving?" "Yes," she nodded, feeling her heart tearing out of her chest. "I did as you said. I talked to Lily. You were right, it will be easier for her without me." Garrett pursed his lips and threw the keys on the nightstand. "And where are you going?" "To Aunt Marie. She lives on the outskirts." "Okay," he said briefly. Allison lowered her gaze. She hoped that at least at this last moment he would say something like, "Don't leave," but he was silent, only moving away even further. "Well," she whispered, "I guess I'll go, just in case. If anything happens, we'll find you," Garrett interrupted. "And don't try to communicate with Lily without her permission." She nodded, unable to speak. I wanted to hug him, but I understood that it was useless. She carefully touched his hand, but he pulled his hand away, and pain mixed with rage blazed in his eyes. "Goodbye, Garrett," she said, biting her lip to keep from crying. "Goodbye," he answered dryly, and turned to the wall. She walked out the door, and the cold wind hit her face. She wanted to sit on the porch and sob, but she forced herself to walk to the car. She cried all the way to her aunt's house, missing several traffic lights and not paying attention to the signals of other drivers. Thus, the Crow family fell apart once strong, cheerful, united by love and trust. She drove, looking at the flickering lights of the city and thought, "But I could have stopped. I could not drink, not go to the toilet with him. I could not have betrayed Garrett." But the car rushed forward, and the past could no longer be returned. While the Crow family was falling apart, Trevor lived in his small rented home with the feeling that the ground had gone from under his feet. He quit, though not immediately, but a week after the meeting with Garrett, realizing that he was not able to work in the office and any day could bring him to a meeting with his father's rage. The boss was surprised. "What is the urgency? You're a great developer." But Trevor said family circumstances were forcing him to leave town. He tried to contact Lily, but her phone remained locked after she broke her cell phone. He drove to their house, but saw that neither her car nor she was there, and he was about to knock on the door, but he realized if Garrett answered, he might not survive the meeting. Trevor couldn't find a place for himself. On one side of the scale was his shame and remorse for the breakdown with his beloved mother. On the other was his longing for Lily, whom he really loved. At night, he tossed and turned, remembering how they walked in the park, how he fixed her laptop, how she chirped about plans for a future together. I lost it all due to my stupidity, he thought, and the bitterness became unbearable. He ended up renting out his apartment and buying a ticket to Seattle, where a friend of his had a mobile game development startup. Maybe I can start a new life, he asked himself. But deep down I understood that you couldn't run away from your own mistakes. The day before he left, he emailed Lily a final confession. Lily, I don't know if you'll read this. I'm leaving Atlanta. I won't interfere with your life. But I want you to know that every word about my love for you was true. And if I could rewind time, I would never have touched that stranger in the club. I don't make excuses, I have no forgiveness. Just wanted to say that I will always remember you. I hope one day you can forget this terrible story and be happy. Goodbye. Trevor. He pressed send and closed the laptop, feeling that a short electronic signal took away the last vestiges of hope from his soul. A month after Allison left, Garrett realized he couldn't continue to live in limbo. Every evening, coming to an empty house, he felt only melancholy and irritation. Sometimes Lily stayed with him, but more often she lived in a rented apartment near the college. He left her a duplicate key so she could come whenever she wanted. Allison tried to call him a couple of times, wrote long messages about how sorry she was, asked about Lily, but Garrett just didn't answer. He thought that maybe time would dull the pain, but the pain did not subside. One evening, while sorting things out in his bedroom, he came across an old photo album. There were photographs of their honeymoon. She and Allison were young and happy, laughing, hugging, kissing. Remembering how he once couldn't breathe without her, now he only felt a sharp flash of anger. She betrayed me, Garrett reminded himself, and not just with a banal betrayal, but with our daughter's boyfriend. There's no turning back. Reluctantly, he took out his phone and called his lawyer. Emmy, hi, he said hoarsely into the phone. I need advice on divorce. The interlocutor, an old lawyer friend with whom he once worked on firm matters, replied, Okay, Garrett. Come tomorrow, we'll discuss the details. Just the word divorce made his stomach ache. It seemed that he was going to demolish the house that he himself had been building brick by brick for 23 years. But after what happened, the house had already cracked, and there was no point in keeping it intact. The next morning, he went to the lawyer and discussed all the legal issues with her. And by evening, he had ready-made documents in his hands, waiting for Allison's signature. He dialed his wife's number. Hello, came Allison's trembling voice. Garrett, yes. Listen, I have documents. For divorce, need to sign. There was silence on the other end. Then Allison sobbed. Garrett, are you sure? More than, he clenched his teeth, trying not to break into a scream. But, she breathed convulsively into the phone. Maybe we should go to a psychologist, or give it more time. No, Garrett snapped. I'm tired of lies and pain. Come to the lawyer's office tomorrow. The papers are ready. He heard her muffled crying, but his heart did not flinch. Enough, he said to himself. I've had enough. The next day they met at the lawyer's. Garrett was the first to arrive, sitting in the waiting room, leafing through some kind of booklet. When Allison walked in, wearing an elegant black coat, he tensed a little. She looked thinner and her eyes were red. When he saw her, his heart sank from the memories, but he firmly told himself, no. They exchanged short nods. The lawyer called them into the office and explained the essence of the documents, the division of property, and the conditions. Allison cried silently as she signed each page. Garrett signed with pursed lips. The lawyer understood everything, so she didn't ask unnecessary questions. When everything was ready, they left the office and went outside. The day turned out to be cold and drizzling. Garrett looked at Allison. Well, that's it. She clutched the umbrella in her hands. Garrett, I know I deserve this. But maybe at least in the future we can talk without hatred. He grimaced, carefully not meeting her gaze. Maybe someday, but not now. I'm in too much pain. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks again. She wanted to hug him, but she knew it was impossible. Goodbye, said Garrett. Goodbye. Allison slowly walked back to her car, drowning in melancholy. Garrett stood in the rain, looking after her. He thought, why did it end so badly? Is there really no chance for at least some kind of reconciliation? But remembering Lily's face, filled with tears and pain, I realized, no, you can't build a family on such fragments. Years have passed. 10 long years during which the events of that fateful dinner with the Crow family gradually turned into a terrible legend of the past that no one wanted to remember. Allison settled in a small apartment on the outskirts of Atlanta, not far from Aunt Marie's house. At first, she lived on part-time jobs. She withdrew into herself, did not go to visit her friends, and avoided parties. That night at the club took away her zest for life. Every day she thought about Lily and Garrett. Where are they now? How are they feeling? But she herself tried not to write. Lily made it clear that she did not want to communicate. Only occasionally did she send modest gifts for her daughter's birthday, but received no response. Years later, little by little, she began to come to her senses. She got a job as an accountant in a small family cafe, lived quietly, tried to avoid any new novels, because shame and pain did not allow her to confidently look men in the eyes. Sometimes, lying on the sofa in the evenings, she looked at photographs of Lily saved on a flash drive, old photographs where her daughter was still a child, hugging her mother, laughing, and I cried every time. 9 years after the divorce, Aunt Marie died, leaving her a small inheritance enough for Allison to improve her living conditions a little. But there was still emptiness in her soul. Immediately after Lily left Trevor and moved out of her parents' house, she went to study, trying to forget herself. Garrett supported her in every possible way, paid for housing, help from a psychologist. He himself underwent several sessions with a psychotherapist to cope with the trauma of his wife's betrayal. Little by little, Lily learned to let go of the pain. A couple of years after graduating from college, she met another man, Peter, kind and reliable, far from club and party life. Lily felt that she was at peace with Peter. He was not an explosive romantic like Trevor, but he always kept his word and treated her with respect. When Peter proposed to her, she thought for a long time, not being afraid of repeating past mistakes. But in the end, I decided, let me have a second chance at love. Garrett remained close, although he himself never remarried. He had short-term romances, but he avoided serious relationships, having once been burned too badly. But his soul thawed next to Lily and Peter. Years later, they had a son, little Jake, whom Garrett loved immensely. He became an outlet for him and a reason to look at life with a smile again. Somewhere in the 7th year, after everything that happened, Lily one day accidentally came across Trevor's profile on social networks. He moved to Seattle and opened an IT company there, apparently successfully. There were rare photographs on the page without the girl, a lot about work, about trips. Lily seemed to plunge into the past for a moment. What if? Flashed through my head, but she immediately drove away this thought, remembering everything that happened between them. Did you want to write to her? Maybe for a split second, yes, but she immediately closed the page, feeling that there was no point in opening old wounds. Allison was sitting late at night at home, scrolling through her social media feed on her phone, occasionally glancing at old photos. She found Lily's profile a long time ago, but it was closed. But sometimes public posts popped up there, rare, but still. And suddenly, she saw a new photo. Lily posted about a vacation outside the city with her family. The picture shows Lily, her husband Peter, their son Jake, laughing on the shoulders of Garrett. The picture was filled with such warmth. Garrett holding his grandson, Lily laughing, Peter hugging his wife next to him. Everyone had happy faces. Nature around, sunny day. Allison froze. The phone almost fell out of her hands. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and a lump formed in her throat. She saw that Lily's life had worked out without her. She didn't need her mother. Garrett seemed happy and content. Well, she thought with a weak smile through her tears, at least everything is fine with them. She looked at the photo as if trying to capture every detail. Here he is, my grandson, she said to herself. And I never held him in my arms. I never congratulated him on his birth. The pain was acute, but there was also joy for Lily. Her daughter found her happiness and did not break down after the nightmare. Allison's heart sank with the realization that she had no place in this circle. She herself closed her way there 10 years ago when she chose a moment of passion and drunken freedom, and this choice doomed her to a long life of solitude. She ran her fingers across the screen as if petting Lily, Peter, the boy, and Garrett, and she whispered through her tears, "I love you. Forgive me." But in response, there was only a silent social media feed, and so ended the story of Allison Crow, a mother and wife who herself put an end to family happiness with one reckless act. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even click to the next one.